Crypto Scam Queen and the Duke. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. Zimin Kian, age 47, defrauded £5.5 billion worth of Bitcoin from 128,000 victims in her native China and fled to the United Kingdom in July 2017 on a Caribbean passport under a false name. Accordingly, she diddled billions of pounds worth of Bitcoin from thousands upon thousands of victims in China and then ran off. You might perhaps refer to it as the ultimate Chinese takeaway. Kian, with the assistance of Jian Wen, a 42-year-old former takeaway worker, dovetails brilliantly, doesn't it, who was from Leeds, whom she had recruited over social media, moved into a £17,000 per month rented home in Hampstead, North London. The pair laundered their digital fortune in a 48-week-long shopping spree between 24 locations in Europe, buying watches, diamonds, and designer clothes. They went all over the place. They set off in Oxford in September 2017, and they went to Edinburgh, Berlin, Zurich, Hohenzollern Castle, Trier, Frankfurt, Bremen, Copenhagen, Stockholm, Hemmersdal, Klosterneuburg, Vienna, Kutna-Hora, Edinburgh, Dublin, zigzagging across Europe as they spent their ill-gotten gains. Kian, who had convictions for fraud in China, presented herself as an international jewellery tycoon, with Wen acting as her majordomo. In a single excursion, the pair spent £119,000 purchasing 2 watches at a Van Cleef & Arpels in Zurich, Switzerland. On Tuesday, she was jailed for 11 years and 8 months after admitting money laundering offences and transferring and possessing criminal property, namely cryptocurrency. Strikes me as rather light, given that there was £5.5 billion worth, and one should imagine that she would have received a much harsher sentence in China. Her accomplice, Seng Hock Ling, a 47-year-old Malaysian, was jailed for 4 years and 11 months after pleading guilty to transferring criminal property over his role in a multi-billion-pound fraud. Suspicions by authorities arose when Kian and Wen attempted to buy a £24 million mansion near Hampstead High Street and a £12.5 million property in Totteridge, North London, in 2018. In October 2018, police officers raided Kian and Wen's rented property for initial search. Kian was found lying underneath the covers of her purple bedspread. She lied to officers that her name was Yadi Zhang and that she was suffering from a long-term brain and leg injury. In the safe of her bedroom, officers discovered a notepad containing the login details for her laptops and the passkeys for the online wallets containing her digital fortune. Investigating officers could not have suspected that the passkeys would lead them to the largest single seizure of cryptocurrency in the world. In total, officers seized more than 61,000 bitcoins, now worth approximately £5 billion, alongside other non-crypto assets valued at more than £200 million. On a red Dell laptop, officers found £823 million worth of Bitcoin stored in a crypto wallet. Another black Lenovo laptop had more than £350 million worth of Bitcoin. The discoveries didn't end there. Officers also found £130,000 in bundles of cash, along with smaller bundles of euros, United States dollars, and Swiss francs. Using the details from a crude treasure map that Kian had drawn for Wen for a safety deposit box around the corner from London's Harrods, officers found a mobile phone and 2 laptops containing millions of pounds worth of cryptocurrency. Although the seizures were suspicious, Kian and Wen were not arrested. Kian then took the investigation as her cue to flee and spent the next 6 years on the run, employing an entourage whom she financially coerced with punitive contracts to help her cover her tracks. Wen was arrested in May 2021 at the same Hampstead address and later sentenced to 6 years imprisonment for money laundering offences. However, it wasn't until April the 22nd, 2024, that officers managed to trace Kan to an Airbnb in York. Police stormed the modest yellow brick house in Rycroft Avenue, and entertainingly, just like 6 years previously, they found Kan cowering in her bed, clutching her bedsheets. She was subsequently charged with money laundering offences. Thus, this individual, where there was a detailed and dedicated investigation over 7 years, got hold of the scam cryptocurrency queen and her ill-gotten gains. 2 occasions being found lolling in bed. Now, I haven't analysed the nature of this individual, but they demonstrate significant narcissistic indicators by virtue of the fact that they've scammed people, thus showing they've got no emotional empathy, that there's grandiosity with regard to believing that they could get away with it, there's an absence of accountability, there's showcasing with regard to the expensive purchases, the expensive tastes, the lack of boundary recognition as a consequence of stealing other people's items. Whether ultimately this crosses the threshold into narcissism, well, quite possibly, but that isn't the point of this video. I wanted to give you the background to demonstrate that you've got this individual who quite clearly is an accomplished scam artist, albeit one that's often found lying around in bed. And this accomplished scam artist had managed, as I explained earlier, to con 128,000 victims to hand over their Bitcoin so then she could then disappear with those ill-gotten gains. But here's where it gets interesting. Kan had created a manuscript that was called the 6-Year Plan. Now, it's the contents of her manuscript, which was entitled 6-Year Plan, that demonstrates more aspects of her grandiosity and quite possibly magical thinking, which may well tip her over the boundary into the fact of being a narcissist. In it, she had plans to purchase a Swedish castle because that was then to assert her status of being a luxurious person and of being important. That she wanted to found an international bank, which was part of wanting to extend her influence and control to build wealth and influence. She also wanted to become the queen of Liberland. Liberland's a self-proclaimed micronation, i.e. it's unrecognised, on a strip of land between Croatia and Serbia. She also wanted to acquire a portfolio of multi-million-pound mansions in the United Kingdom, because she wanted to access high society and the Dalai Lama and the Pope. So what you're starting to see is that from this document, the 6-Year Plan, there was clear evidence of grandiosity, of the fact that she believed that she ought to belong to a strata of society which included the Pope, the Dalai Lama, high society as a whole, that she thought that she should be a queen of a nation that didn't exist. All a bit wackadoo. But then, here comes the entertaining part, the more particularly entertaining part, is that she wrote in detail about winning the confidence of a duke from the United Kingdom. Now, at this point in time, there are 29 dukedoms. There's the Duke of Cornwall, Prince William, the Duke of Norfolk, which is Edward Fitzalan Howard, John Seymour's the Duke of Somerset, Charles Gordon Lennox, the Duke of Richmond, Henry Fitzroy, Duke of Grafton, Henry Somerset, the Duke of Beaufort, and plenty of others as well, which used to include, of course, Andrew Mountbatten Windsor, who used to be the Duke of York, and also includes the Duke of Sussex, the Prince of Pink Pancakes. She had clearly detailed a plan whereby she had targeted a duke with the intention of using that duke to gain access into high society and influence. Now, as I've mentioned, there are 29 present dukes in the peerages of the Kingdom of England, Scotland, Great Britain, Ireland. But there's really two dukes that stand out as who would most likely be her targets. The first, the Prince of Pink Pancakes. Removed from the working royal family and isolated, that would present a particularly good opportunity to look to assert influence over him, although it would be questionable the extent to which he could bring influence to bear within the circles that she wanted to move in. Remember, this 6-year plan was created back in 2018. Now, at this point, Harry, though, was still in the royal family. He'd just got married to this one's wife. And therefore, given the fact that he's a thicko, and we've seen that he's particularly susceptible to the machinations of other people, for instance, this one's wife, and at the time he was still in the royal family, he would have made a viable target. Since then, of course, his need for money would be something that would also leave him open to influence from somebody like this fraudster. Naturally, Prince Andrew would spring to mind also. Whilst this was before his ill-fated car crash television interview, controversies were swirling around him at this time, and we've always known that Prince Andrew, as a consequence of his narcissism, has always been interested in money. It's a considerable residual benefit, and he's often courted Chinese individuals. And therefore, it would seem to me that Zimin Qian, the Lady of the Bed, may well have identified the former Duke of York as an appropriate target for her to try and win influence from by virtue of utilisation of the defrauded monies, and to then purchase this influence from Andrew. Now, there's no suggestion that Harry has engaged in that purchasing of influence, but we know that Andrew was purportedly offered for sale through Sarah Fergie Ferguson, his ex-wife, who was touting him around at £500,000 ago to grant access to him. And therefore, I think on balance, that it's most likely that this crypto scam queen had Prince Andrew, or the former Prince Andrew, in her sights as somebody that she was going to win the confidence of, presumably through the application of copious amounts of money, in order to gain access to high society. It's demonstrative of the deluded mind of Zimin Qian, and also the fact that Prince Andrew had already garnered a reputation for being someone that was corruptible in this regard. A quite entertaining tale of somebody who most likely is a narcissist, who's been caught, finally, after being the defendant in Britain's biggest money laundering case of £5.5 billion, who, as an utter rascal herself, was going to target a duke in order to win influence. And two potential targets automatically would spring to mind: Prince Harry and the former Prince Andrew, now Andrew Mountbatten Windsor. And on balance, one suspects it would have been the latter. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.